Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof. Welcome to an extremely sleepy edition of the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. Today we're talking about Chim. My name is Chris Nelson, otherwise known as Rotten Deadite. With me today are...
Chris Franzen, otherwise known as Mojo.
Cody Hage, also known as Ordo Corvus.
Sober Joe, also known as Heroic. I've never seen Sober Me before. Have fun.
Justin, also known as Neradak and Borin on Reddit.
Okay, so this has been a long time coming, this particular subject, because we've kind of had to build up to it. We've already, if you haven't watched the, we have done one on like the nature of dreams and that kind of stuff. Have we? No, we haven't, have we? Shit.
No. We might have alluded to it, kind of. Never anything more than a big.
I wanted to push back.
Well, we did. I know we did talk a little bit about the dream-like nature of the Arbus in the episode where we did the Arbus or the wheel. Yeah, in the episode where we did the wheel, we talked a lot about it there. So you're gonna want to take a look at that. I know that also in that episode of the wheel, I'm pretty sure I mentioned the concept of subgradiency, but I didn't really get into it too much. Although that reminds me. I found something fun. What did I find? Where did I put it?
Not the porn, the other stuff.
No, I'm looking at that too. Okay. I'm gonna build this out really fast because it's cool. So you know, one of the things that we mention a lot in Elder Scrolls lore is quantum mechanics and the idea of everything existing not as a yes or a no, but as like the possibilities of, you know, lots of percentages. Lots of different things could happen. Elder Scrolls themselves are a little bit like, you know, have a little bit of a quantum nature to them, where, you know, you can go count them and turn around and count them, and there's going to be a different. And then we've talked a lot about subgradiency, where you use Fourier transforms to pull the sub-signal out of a master signal, sort of like separating one note out of a chord that you play on a guitar. Fourier transforms are very important to the Elder Scrolls, to the mathematics parts of Elder Scrolls lore because of that. So I thought you guys might be interested in quantum Fourier transforms, which are used on quantum computers that use quantum superpositions instead of bits. So instead of it being like a binary value of like ones and zeros, a quantum computer would use probabilities. So they don't really deliver you exact answers, but they can give you a solution with a known probability of like, well, you know, 1 + 1 is probably 80–90% of the time going to be 2. Fourier transforms are used in during quantum superpositions to help separate out the separate possibilities. So, wouldn't you love to know what algorithm you use in quantum Fourier transforms? It's called Shor's algorithm.
Well, fuck.
Yay! I love that. I know. Math nerds! Woo! Okay. VHS
There was like a lot of words in there that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I failed math.
Well, if one person got that joke, then terrific. But yeah, it's a real thing. Shor's algorithm. I read the Wikipedia page on it. Didn't understand a fucking thing. So let's talk about Chim. I'm going to start basic. I think we should start basic in case you are not a super thick lore beard and somebody gave you this video because you were like, "What the hell is Chim?" and they said, "Watch this." First off, they've given you a really terrible source. You should really be going somewhere else. But Chim is a thing mentioned in the 36 Lessons and a couple other obscure places in Elder Scrolls lore that is probably easiest to explain it as it's a little bit like the Buddhist concept of enlightenment. And if that doesn't help you any, it's a little bit like when Neo learns about the true nature of the Matrix, and he can control the Matrix and stuff. It's a little bit like that. And if that doesn't help you any, it's like having console code access on the computer game, and you can type in cheat codes.
No.
All right. But Chim is, as far as I can make out, it's actually, like, saying that it's close to the Buddhist concept of enlightenment is actually kind of doing it a disservice. It's actually really pretty specific to Elder Scrolls lore. There's really nothing else like it as far as real life sources go. Although the fact that it has a lot to do with what's called the Psijic Endeavor. The Psijic Endeavor, by the way, is the endeavor to achieve Chim. Is not a coincidence, because I think you might remember from last week's episode, or maybe it was one before that, we mentioned that the Psijic Endeavor was basically sort of Kirkbride's attempt to try to put a little mark on the idea of psychic powers to keep someone else from just dragging psychic powers out of Dungeons and Dragons and sticking it into Elder Scrolls lore. So he came up with the idea of the Psijic Endeavor. And Chim, by definition, is a lot like... It has a lot to do with what we typically think of as psionic powers. So I'm going to get into that. I should mention that several people often frequently ask in forums what the once you achieve Chim, does it give you superpowers? And the answer is kind of, but about that, in order to attain Chim, you have to be pretty freaking powerful to begin with. So chances are pretty good that you've already got really amazing stuff at your abilities and stuff at your fingertips to begin with. But it is a state of awareness. You achieve Chim in the same respect that you would, say, achieve 220 beats per minute with your heart, and your heart rate or something, or you achieve 102 degrees Fahrenheit temperature or something, You reach that point, but then you have to maintain that state of awareness in order to utilize it. And maintaining that state is incredibly difficult. People like to ask questions of who in the Elder Scrolls universe has attained Chim, and aside from Hrandal, or Talos, and probably Vivec, that's it, right?
Yeah.
As far as I know, yeah.
So,
I'm going into Apocrypha.
yeah. Well, I did already mention Hrandal. And so at this point, let's see. So let me just sort of belt out. God, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain what Chim is, and I'm not having a whole lot of luck. So I'm just gonna go, Joe.
So the way that it was explained to me was it's essentially the realization of the dream state, and that you sort of don't exist, but then having the strength of mind and the presence of self to continue existing. And then basically it's kind of continuing with the it's like X, but not. So it's like Nirvana, but not. It's like the Matrix, but not. It's like lucid dreaming somebody else's dream, only not exactly because it's God.
And
Yeah.
Pretty much how I got it.
I think that's the point where you're most at risk of stomach, though.
Yeah, that's if you don't have the presence of self to continue existing when you realize that you don't exist.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say the way I kind of explained it when I did Underqueen, I went in and it's being part of everything and knowing that everything is part of you. And so in a sense you lose your individuality yet choose to maintain it through force of will.
Mm-hmm.
It's maintaining your individuality in spite of knowing that you are just a part of the dream.
So I'm gonna try and explain it in terms closer to psychic terminology. So if you can imagine reaching a state where you are entirely in possession of the mind of everyone in the universe, everyone in the world, simultaneously, where you understand their hopes and their dreams and their fears and their goals and their history and their future and everything, from beginning to end of all of time, simultaneously. You comprehend all of this stuff as though it was your own. You can think of that as a little bit like the conversation that we often reference when it comes to zero summing with the Godhead, where the Godhead says, "You are part of me." this is a little bit. This is very similar. What's happening is that the person on top of the tower is seeing all of the Godhead, which is to say everyone, because God is everywhere, and there's a threat of losing your self-identity at that point.
Mhm.
And that's when you risk becoming lost in this gigantic sea of souls, and that's sort of like what zero sum is. It's failing to maintain your sense of individuality and becoming drowned out by reality in its truest form. Yeah, when I say it's a lot like Cerebro, I'm not kidding. It's like we're something right out of the X-Men. Go ahead, Chris.
There's something to be said with the risk of zero sum, with not even at the initial achievement of Chim itself, but maintaining it. You have to, you mentioned that you're connected to all, every soul, and the mental anguish that must come with that. That constant struggle of keeping yourself separate, keeping some sense of individuality, and on top of that, when people say, can you do anything in the dream? Does it give you, God mode powers? And there is from the sermons, Sermon 11, which is the number 11 is a numerologically a very important number, especially when discussing Chim, ruling kings, etc. It's the second paragraph in Sermon 11. The waking world is the amnesia of dream. All motifs can be mortally wounded. Once slain, themes turn into the structure of future nostalgia. Do not abuse your powers, or they will lead you astray. They will leave you like rebellious daughters. They will lose their virtue. They will become lost and resentful, and finally become pregnant with the seed of folly. Soon you will be the grandparent of a broken state. You will be mocked. It will fall apart like a stone that recalls that it is really water. And I think that is very important. If you imagine the sea of souls that you are connected to as an ocean of souls, and you are a stone, you are an individual within that ocean, and the constant struggle of Chim and maintaining it, you lose that sense of self. You no longer be that stone, and you realize again that you are only water, and that will be like the zero sum. So I think it's important to keep in mind that Chim is not an end-all solution to do whatever you want in the Arbus. It still remains as more of a state of enlightenment, at more than a useful tool of like conquest. People ask, well, if Vivec had Chim, why didn't he just Chim Dagothur away, or anything like that? There's this constant struggle, and it is not this just God mode on and you're wrecking shit.
Yeah, and it's I'm really glad you answered that, because that's a question that people ask all the damn time.
Yeah.
And that's a really great way to put it. You the act of attaining Chim is in and of itself a risk, and even once you've attained it, even once you're in that state, there's another state beyond that that is even riskier, which is the state where you take on the responsibility of holding all those dreams, all those minds together, where you become the all-uniting force, which in and of itself, in a way, mystically speaking, means that you become nothing. And that's theoretically a little bit like what the state of Amaranth is, of becoming a state of becoming an empty vessel, a container, which is I guess a term that's probably really important if you're reading late into the 36 lessons. So, the Psijic Endeavor as I mentioned before, is the quest to find Chim to transcend mortal boundaries, which is another way of saying to push past the mortal death subgradient, theoretically the last subgradient in the hierarchy. And that brings me to, really quick, when I was talking about the envisioning the minds of everyone in Mundus. If you read the love letter and you're wondering what the state gradient echo of Mundus Center X is, that's what that is. It's the provisional house in 36 lessons, is the way it's described. And as Kirkbride explained to us in an IRC chat, which was very revealing, the sermon
19.
19, thank you, is the one where Vivec builds the provisional house, steps into it, and then realizes what the next step is, and he can't reach it. Which is important because because standing in the provisional house, in his partition that he's created. Oh, hey. Corey, say hello. Because we're already casting.
I think he's still patching in.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, well. So, once you've reached that state of Chim, and Vivec describes the provisional house as though it's telling him that he is safe, but he doesn't feel safe. And that's sort of like the trick to becoming Amaranth, is to reach this state of almost death, of near zero sum, of almost being completely obliterated in the face of everything, and then relaxing and feeling safe as though you are, cradled in your own house. Somehow you have to do that. Which is why Vivec can't do it, because can you seriously think about anybody who's less secure than...
Yeah.
When did Vivec achieve Chim? I couldn't tell you. I strongly suspect it's when he wrote the 36 lessons, was in a state of Chim. But I don't really have anything hardcore to back that up. It's just something in the back of my head.
It's just somewhere along the line he does have it.
Clearly.
But I think it got mentioned, I don't know if it was the one that I wasn't on or the other one, but it got mentioned that there were a couple of points it might have been, like how, like in Sermon 14 is the first appearance of the word itself.
Well, yeah, but when he speaks specifically about the provisional house, I think that's probably a safe bet that at that point is when he's definitely in that state.
Yeah, he has it at that bit. But whether that's like when he was first getting it and then he just goes in, or...
Possible. It fits in a logical order that in Sermon 14 he learns about it from Molech Baal somehow. I still haven't quite figured that one out yet. And then achieves it in Sermon 19. That seems like a reasonable statement. Corey's still getting his microphone working, apparently.
Yeah. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, say hello.
Hello.
We kind of just whipped through everything.
I could argue that last point further if you view the 8 monsters as if you view the 8 monsters as Vivec's own flaws kind of externalized, then do you feel like he would have had to have kind of expunged those flaws before he would have gotten Chim, or
no? Actually, I can
just
tell you
I just looked at immediately after that Sermon 20.
Well, if you he builds the provisional house almost in order to find his children. He certainly utilizes it to find his children. I would argue that he attains Chim in order to find his children in Mundus. Again, a lot like Cerebro. But yeah, and but I would say that I would definitely say that his children are not necessary for him to attain Chim. I would also argue that they are probably not necessary for him to attain Amaranth, because even though he killed his children, including the mightiest of his children, he still didn't attain Amaranth until 3 eras later. So, yeah. his children definitely seem to be some like exterminating them did seem to have a goal, but I'm only assuming. I haven't finished my commentaries on all 36 lessons yet, so I'm just going to state without a whole lot of self-assurance that it was in order to sort of cement his godhood, so to speak.
There is some. I think there's an argument for the children being negative aspects of himself that he wanted to expunge before attaining Chim.
Mm-hmm.
Only in Sermon 18, right before 19, where he builds the provisional house, it says the warrior poet decided he had to begin his book of hours at that point because the world was about to bend with its age. The book of hours, I've always kind of taken as the lessons.
Yeah, me too.
Especially its number being 36, the hours, that's just what I've always assumed. And, if that was him, it's often been theorized that the sermons were a device that Vivec used to kind of rewrite history. I'm more in the camp that maybe it made the branching multiverse theory.
Sure. Yeah.
That's not really important. I'm not sure why I'm talking about that.
It's kind of relevant. Go ahead.
Yeah. I suppose that could maybe be an external sign of his attaining Chim. But if those 8 children were in fact negative aspects he felt he needed to kill off, perhaps. I'm trying to word this right. Okay, all right, true will. Rotten, you've written about it. You're removing desire from will, and I think that's thematically we can take at least in one interpretation that is him doing that in anticipation of achieving Chim, because then right after in the next sermon. He builds a provisional house, which I always like to think as like a sky deck on a skyscraper in the middle of the nowhere, where he can better view, the mythical Arbus, the
out
top
there with a bunch of fucking
tower.
2x4s and Vivec's all like wearing flannel and shit, got some gold in his cheek, I'm gonna go out and build a fucking deck.
The provisional deck.
Gonna get her done.
I won.
I mean, that's sure. But he builds a provisional house, which I like to think is his platform of viewing, the tower and Chim. And then from there, not only does he sees the monsters that he has to kill, as well as he sees Talos coming. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, oh shit, and it looked like, at the end, if we take that as a failed Amaranth attempt, he goes, well, fuck that, I'm still gonna make good on Chim.
Right. On my own state of divinity.
Yes. Yeah. And then he proceeds after that to start killing his monster children.
Although you could say, all right, let me suggest this: that at that point he, at the end of Sermon 18, the last line technically to the sermon is, in this world and others, 18 minus 1, the victor, is the magical disc hurled to reach heaven by violence. Mm-hmm. And we know that the magical disc hurled to reach heaven by violence is...
the hurling disc.
Which is...
break.
Keep going.
I don't know. Throw me a bone here. What are we going for?
I don't exactly have an answer. That's why I'm asking. This is one of those dickish things I do to make myself look like I know everything.
something space gods.
Magna G. Yeah.
Oh, Nemoli. Fuck.
Yes, there you go.
I forgot about that. Yeah, Nemoli. Yeah, that's a big. That's a big
All right.
fucking deal about that.
Yeah, that only show up during dragon breaks, where
Yes.
where there's in states of untime, and the Nemoli deal with a lot of mnemonic magic, which is magic memory.
Yes.
And what before you get Amaranth?
Say that again. I couldn't hear you.
What had to leave before we got Amaranth?
Memory.
Memory did. Yeah. Okay. So that's as far as I've gotten. It's not an answer. I don't want to make that sound like I just solved something.
We
I'm
got the
saying that-
beginning primordial
Yeah,
oozes of an answer.
the basics, I'm thinking that the whole thing is really going to click any minute now, but it hasn't yet on that. But I think what happens at the end of Sermon 18. This is the only actual answer I'm actually going to get to here on the subject. I think at the end of Sermon 18 is that Vivec, having had his little thing with Am, where Am says, you are the magical hermaphrodite, the martial acts, and the sex, death, language, and unique, and all the middle world. She's basically saying you have a destiny. There's a plan for you. You've had all this stuff happen to you, and everything has been your entire path has been laid out in order for you to achieve a goal. And then it says Vivec knew why he would record his Book of Hours. At that point, he understands what it is that he has to do. And as we know, his ultimate goal is to be is to be womb ready for the Amaranth in the Fifth Era. And I think that's when he realizes that his responsibility is to create the Amaranth. So what he does is he goes and builds a provisional house thinking, I'm going to Amaranth. I'm totally going to Chim all over the place, and I'm going to Amaranth. And instead he finds out that he can't do it. And when he discovers that he can't do it, when he discovers he's still afraid, the first thing he does is he goes out and kills his first son. And I think that's what's going on in Vivec's head at this point is, and I'm sorry for not using. I just realized I've not been using gender neutral language for this whole time. Sorry about that. I think what Vivec realizes at that point is I can't achieve Amaranth in this state that I'm in, so I have to go out and murder all the bad, evil parts of myself and purify myself in a way. Cut away all the weeds in my garden. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, open it up so big. And trim all the extra stuff away so that Vivec will be ready and probably, but you could argue that the 36 lessons telling of Vivec is that Z thought that at the end when Z kills the mightiest of her children, in other words, Nerevar, that would be the final step to becoming ready to achieve Amaranth, which must have been real fucking disappointing. Very anticlimactic.
Yeah. Well,
but hey, what you gonna do? This ain't a popularity contest, Vivec.
Yeah, and I mean, I think throughout her life we see occurrences of Vivec doing, not necessarily the most savory things.
Yeah.
But they're all the things that had to be done.
Maybe not in the way that Z decided to do them, but yeah.
Whether that's killing Nerevar or Red Ear or what have you.
Or sexually assaulting Barfuck or any of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Azura.
Or Talos. I mean Izmir for that matter. Yeah. But that's do not ask her to betray her nature. And there you go. That's just Vivec for you. If anything, by the end of the 36 lessons, the Vivec that we apparently have is the closest to a divine and perfect being as you can get. And I would say that the 36 lessons Vivec, especially at the beginning, versus the one that you meet in Morrowind, seem like almost two totally different people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a coincidence. I think you might be able to argue that the Vivec in Morrowind is the evolved version of Vivec. You know.
Yeah. You know, it
Point, you
seems
just want
like
to float around in the lotus position all day.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So, any other questions that people get a lot about Chim?
Whose head is it anyway? Like, this is kind of an Amaranth thing, or like it's related to it. Like, is it like, I don't remember why, but I think in one of the last couple episodes the question came up whether it was, or whether it's Anu's dream when you Chim that you're kind of stepping into and I guess like finger quotes lucid dreaming at.
Right.
And I would say Anu's dream because he's the most recent like iteration of the dream to begin with. So I don't know. Do we want to talk about that a bit?
I can actually probably put a nail on that one. I don't think it matters. When you reach Chim, you kind of see everything. You understand everything, and the division between Anu and the god and Padme and the Godhead is largely inconsequential at that point. It's that's one of the reasons why it's so ferociously frightening is that you blow right past whatever layers you've got and you see the big magical onion.
I think
Oh, it's a fucking onion.
I agree with all of this. I just want to add that I think it would be even that much more difficult to even try to reach outside of the dream that you know and understand. It's just another level of mental stress that you probably can say fuck it to. I think it would be mostly irrelevant. Especially in some like let's say Vivec for well, really any of the chimsters out there because they're all mostly Padmaic. Well, it's Talis and Vivec. They're Padmaic lines, so they're more inclined to see down. They're more inclined to see forward, not up and backwards. That just goes against their cores.
I like that point. That's a good argument. Yeah.
Yeah, their progress. It's a manifest destiny. I fucking love that phrase.
Like you just got like the
I just really wanted
there.
to
You
say
like you said it. You had just that smile.
It was very satisfying to say that.
Yeah.
You don't get to say that often enough. Yeah,
15 or so episodes just makes sense to say that.
Yes, exactly.
We're done.
Yeah.
Series finale.
That's it. I'm done.
The same manifest destiny. He's done. I have no more goals. I live free from desire now. I've done everything.
Yes. Oh, now it's
yeah.
But yeah, that's
well, for such a damn complicated episode, this actually pretty much turned out to be open and shut. Shit. We spent a lot more time and hawing about other stuff.
You guys talk about all the different pronunciations?
Oh, God.
Oh, we forgot to do that. We were supposed to plan ahead of time for this cast. We were supposed to all decide how to... Yeah, we were all going to try to decide to pronounce Chim differently, all of us, consistently, and then never bring it up. Shit. Missed opportunity, man.
Fuck.
Say what you see, fight me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for the record. Kirkbride tells us that it's pronounced Kim.
Fuck that. Fuck that.
I don't. Yeah.
That's stupid.
Chimney Chim Chim Chiru, motherfucker.
Put me on the record. Yeah. It's Chim.
It's Kim. It's pronounced Kim.
It's anything but Kim.
Yeah.
I still go by Chim.
Chim, yeah. Chim's nice.
That actually sounds cool.
Yeah. Chim.
Yeah. I actually have a Talis.
You gotta be a proper Michiganer to do the Chim.
Right?
So with Talis and Chim, though, where does that happen? Because I was never 100% sold on that. I figured that he would. But, like, I don't think that at any point that we've seen him, he hasn't. And I sort of tie that into the whole player character has Chim thing with the idea of so many player characters potentially being Shezarines and him potentially being the same. I tend to run with it being like, oh, it's just like part of the whole thing where Lorcan was trying to get it. One of him will get it eventually.
Mhm.
And that's sort of my interpretation of that. But I don't know if that's like the
Well,
conventional wisdom or if people have other opinions.
I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you want my opinion on that, read Underqueen. It's the
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do want your opinion, so I'll read Underqueen.
There you go. I would say I can easily talk about why Talos was able to achieve Chim, because he's two Shezarine souls combined into one in the same way that Alm Savi is the combination of three Dunmer souls. But the fact that they are Shezarines, both of them, and therefore incarnations of Lorcan, means that he's sort of, harmonically attuned closer to the thing. But it's kind of hard to explain. I can even kind of fudge it a little bit and explain why he was able to shout Cyrodiil out of a jungle, if you go with that interpretation. Although, for the record, Elder Scrolls Online has a really good explanation of why Cyrodiil used to be a jungle and isn't anymore. It's actually
Free to play. I am so getting that game.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a really good
There's so much
explanation.
stuff
It's solid lore. It's really solid.
I don't like
Yeah, because you guys keep bringing it up, and I
Yeah.
want to see all this shit, but I didn't want to pay a monthly thing, and now it's like I
Phelan
all
lore
over
is
this.
excellent.
Yeah, the second
lore
it
here.
goes free, I'm re-downloading the client, and I'm getting right back in again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for console just so I can have good graphics.
What?
Noob, buy a better gear. Jeez, man, come on.
Dude, I got a wedding.
Oh, yeah, I'm literally on my own computer, so I might have to do the same.
Wedding or
Or-
bitchin' gaming console. Okay, come on. But it's kind of like I can even make an argument as to how shouting worked in that respect, which is that by understanding the way the mind of Mundus works, he was able to therefore understand how the body works. In other words, that he commands the mind with shouting to alter the functioning of the earth bones in such a way as to transform the face of Mundus. But how, like, when did he attain Chim is a good question, or like, for how long was he able? I don't know. Did he just sort of use knowledge that he'd already attained, or was he up there, like, on a big hill, chimming his ass off and then shouting or something? I don't know.
Here's a question. It's vaguely related, only so much as it might help me figure something out. Vaguely related to this. In Vex teaching, Book of the Last Hour, when he goes to visit the Emperor, which Emperor is he visiting? Because I want to say it's Uriel, the seventh. But the way, I don't know, maybe I'm reading it wrong. Like with
it says in the waning era, even the waning years of the Third Era. So who was emperor during the waning years of the Third Era?
Exactly.
In those waning days.
Like
it doesn't.
The way he talks
about
Uriel the Seventh, it's almost like he's talking about Tiber. There's a sense of affection there, and he calls him a master. And I don't know. I just wanted to broach that subject because I've always wanted to get a little better handle on his supposed affection for Uriel the Seventh.
There is the Oversoul of Emperors, the Amulet of Kings, and that whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also the fact that, I mean, you can talk your head off about a master, in the 36 lesson sense, and a ruling king in the 36 lesson sense, and then literally a ruling king. Yeah. I mean, by just simple qualification of being born a septum, Vivec might consider him to be a ruling king, which, I mean, by definition, that's exactly what he is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
especially
it's not a...
Especially the shit that Uriel the Seventh has seen.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, he was apparently he may have been possibly psychic. I mean, he was apparently had portentous dreams, which is
Yeah.
I mean the only difference between that and what Vivec does is that Vivec does it while he's awake. So
That's also the amulet. It's mentioned that the Elder Scrolls can't talk about what happens during Dragon Breaks for shit, but the amulet can go on and on about it.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
This has nothing to do with this Lorecast, but in that same passage, it looks like Uriel's asking Vivec a bunch of questions towards the end. What of my twinned antecedent? What would you think that might be?
Vivec?
I
think he's talking about Tiber Septim there, isn't he? Twinned as in two souls?
Yeah.
Antecedent, person who comes before?
Yeah,
Is that antecedent?
I always say antecedent.
Sorry, who said the quote?
It's Vivec.
Yeah, proceeds. Yeah.
Imagining what Uriel's going to ask him, I believe. Either that or that's what Uriel is literally asking.
What of Ariel's breaking? What of my twinned antecedent? I think, he's talking specifically
I think he's talking
Talis.
about... Yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah. That
What
makes
is the
sense.
meaning of the endeavor that Artame refuses to admit? What
Asking all the
indeed,
right
said the thief
questions.
to the master that mostly knew. Asshole. What indeed? Yeah, fuck you. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of done. You guys done?
Yeah,
Timed out.
So.
Yeah, I got all chimmed out.
I got
Chim
enough shit to
everywhere.
go
It's on
around.
the walls. It's on the walls.
All over the place. Yeah.
It's on the ceiling. It's in my pocket somehow.
Place looks like a Jackson Pollock painting.
I'm gonna have to clean it out of my keyboard.
Did you guys talk about how Chim functions in the metaphysics, as far as when someone does it, how it affects the world?
What are you thinking of? Maybe we did, but I don't know. Maybe not. Go.
It's pretty much rewritten, and I'm going to say the dawn, but it's kind of further than that. But
Well, I mean, there's something that might back that up. Maybe.
but the memory remains.
What the fuck was it? Something erupts with the
it is
newly
a return to the
mantled-
first brush of Anu Padme, where stasis and change created possibility. Is that what we're talking about?
I don't think so.
Internet, I don't know if you can tell, but most of us are either tired or sick right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you figured that out.
4 hours of sleep, guys.
I did a Vanna show yesterday and got kicked in the face a lot.
Okay, all right. This is what I was referring to. I thought it was the commentaries, but then I questioned myself. Okay. It is in Volume 3 of the commentaries, which is a very lore-fucky book. Lot of dealing with the Dragon Break, the Dawn, and Namoli. And Mankar says, that is your ward against the Namoli. They run blue through noise and shine only when the earth trembles with the eruption of the newly mantled. Which really, you could say you could chalk it up to Mankar's crazy, but that's so fucking boring, and I love Mankar way too much. I mean, this boner just won't go away from Mankar. I think it bears some discussion because, I had brought up with the 36 lessons possibly being a device of rewriting history, which would probably, it wouldn't be that wrong to say is most easiest done during a Dragon Break. And if Vivec achieved Chim while he was writing the lessons, caused a Dragon Break, might have rewrote history, changed the world, I think an argument can be made that indeed happens.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I never really thought about it that much to really have a really educated opinion on it.
It seems like there's something in that language that kind of gets you thinking in that direction, certainly.
Yeah.
And if you think about the nature of Chim as seeing all of, reality forwards and backwards in time, it's a lot like sort of having your own Dragon Break moment.
Yeah. Well, even all right. To bring that up, during MK's Ask Me Anything on Reddit, I had asked, or either that or it was in Memospore afterwards because he gave us one extra question. It was either that or the other one. But I had asked how Mankar rewrote his own personal history, and he cut his Nimic back with the razor until he reached a version Dawn. Dawn being the Dawn era Dragon Break, which is a return to that timelessness. And just the word choice, a version Dawn makes it seem a lot more personal and.
And it's his own mythic, not the mythic or all
right.
mythic or anything. It's his personal thread all the way back to the very beginning of.
Really, isn't that a cooler concept that it's his own personal history and it doesn't necessarily have to affect anyone else's? I mean,
right. It's the Carl Jung thing about going all the way back to the moment of your own conception.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it. Yeah, I think you're right. It's the where you go back and you basically create yourself by cutting out your father from the equation altogether, and it allows you to effectively regenerate yourself from the very beginning, the moment of the conception of your life forward, then becomes entirely your own decision and it's not affected in any way by genetics or the will of your father or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. Which also goes, if you think about it, also might have something to do with the fact that you never hear about Vivec's dad in 36 Lessons. It might not be a really complicated issue of, psychosis and, he hated his dad and all that kind of stuff. It might just be that that Vivec's father became irrelevant at that point.
Or conversely, his dad being a dick, or whatever reason that Vivec wanted to write him out, that could have been more motivation to do it in the first place. I think it could be either or, depending on what you would like to believe.
I was actually a little bit surprised when I was trying to figure out who the children were, that none of them were a clean analog to Vivec's father. It seemed like something, I don't know. If I had been writing the 36 Lessons, I don't know if I would have left that out. But I don't know if it's supposed to be there. Does that make sense?
Well, I think that's kind of the point that
mythically it doesn't. It may not actually be intended to be there. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I have 4 hours of sleep.
I mean, I think he wrote him out for a reason, and he's out.
Right.
There's no point in even mentioning it. If he chooses not. If he made it so he doesn't exist. At least in his own world. Yeah.
All right. I sort of get the feeling we're padding.
Yeah, a little bit.
We're gonna
shit
try
now.
and do another cast next week. We're gonna try and do Dagothur if I can get some special guests or more than one. But we may not get to that. But definitely by the weekend of the 14th, we will have our Coda cast thrown together. So hopefully we'll be able to explain that weighty tome a little bit better than we have. Or at the very least, we'll just compile everybody else's notes and present them in one easy-to-listen to format.
Or mind fucking further.
Or just make it worse. We just might make it worse. Okay. All right. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.